Hey, welcome back to the Expert Edge. Today's conversation, we are talking about the number one topic that I get from when I'm running workshops and getting feedback from people on what they struggle with when it comes to speaking, which is over teaching, putting too much content in your presentations and not knowing what to take out or keep in, all that sort of stuff. We're going to cover all of that today. I think it's going to be amazing value for it. I'm really, really excited. Before we get into it today, I wanted to give you an update because I am hosting a new workshop. It's called Speak to Convert. And here's what I've found is for many coaches and experts, their marketing approach is very scattered. Like it's all over the place. Their sales are kind of dripping in, right? They're trickling in every now and again. And your revenue is very unpredictable. It's like up one month, down the next. And so if you do what I'm sharing on Speak to Convert, the goal of it is you're going to have a clear marketing system. You're going to have conversions happening consistently in your business. You're going to have a flood of clients that come in, and you're going to have a really clear plan for actually scaling into the future. And so it's going to take you from a scattered sales approach to a simple, scalable speaking system. And I'm going to take you through what that looks like, how to build it out, all that sort of good stuff in Speak to Convert. So if you're interested in learning that model, in fact, I think it's the best model out there. It's actually a model that if you look at the biggest people in our industry, they're using it. They're using in-person and online presentations that are consistently delivered to grow and scale their business. So the link is in the show notes, colinboyd.co/speak if you want to get yourself registered. It's a free workshop. It's live, by the way, so there's actually no replays. It's literally me live. So definitely check it out. Get yourself registered if you can make it, and you'll get a lot of value from it. So it's good. Speak to Convert. Love to have you on that next workshop. Now, let's get into today's session called Avoiding the Trap of Over Teaching. Hey, it's Colin, and you are listening to the Expert Edge podcast. I was a professional speaker for over a decade, and now I focus on helping coaches, speakers, and course creators to speak and sell on virtual and live stages. The Expert Edge podcast is weekly content focused on helping you build your expert business. We cover marketing, storytelling, sales, communication skills, and so much more. Thanks for taking the time to tune in, and make sure you subscribe and follow us on all our social channels so you don't miss a thing. Let's listen to today's episode. Okay, so let's talk about the number one mistake that people make when it comes to speaking, especially speaking to sell. And the most common mistake that I get across the board is one thing, is that people feel like they teach too much. You know the feeling like you get to the end of your presentation, maybe you're in the last 15 minutes out of it, and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not even halfway through. And you're in the last, 20% of the time that's allocated to you. It happens all the time. It happens on webinars. It happens at keynote events. I will say this, it even happens to professional speakers. I couldn't count the amount of times that I've arrived and they've said, hey, you're the next speaker. However, the last two speakers went over by 10 minutes. And so if you could, I'll say something like, if you could just reduce your presentation by about 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes to get us back on track, that'd be amazing. And I'm like, I've got a 50-minute presentation. You want me to reduce it by 20 minutes? It's basically cutting out half of it, right? And I've been thrown that sort of ball a few times because of the lack of, I'm going to call it professionalism, but it's a lack of planning and precision by previous speakers. And so we're going to have a conversation about this big mistake because I think it really gets in the way of you becoming a great communicator, but it also gets in the way of you making money. Because what tends to happen is if you start over teaching, you saturate, you satiate, you overwhelm the audience with way too many things to do. It's kind of like this. Have you ever gone to, or do you remember those all-you-can-eat buffets at, say, Pizza Hut? And you walk in and you're like super excited, right? You get out there and you head over to the buffet and you grab, 4 pieces of pizza, and then you also grab some ice cream, like just to kick off, right? And you eat all of that and you come back and you grab another 5 pieces of pizza, and then you grab a little bit more ice cream and some candy. And then you finish that and you're feeling completely sick, but you're like, maybe I can just fit one more bit in, and you kind of like eat that last piece of pizza, but it's left over, and you've got this plate that's just demolished, but it's half full. There's still leftovers, and you just feel sick. Now imagine I walked into you and you're in that moment, and I said, "Hey guys, we're going to the next all-you-can-eat buffet. Who's ready?" Right? What would come up for you is, how about no? I cannot eat anything more. I'm about to throw up. But here's the thing. That is how your audience feels when you overteach. Like when you teach way too much all the time, that's how your audience feels. And here's the kicker, is that when you get to the end of your presentation and you make an offer or you ask them to take the next step, they're going to say, "Are you kidding?" They're going to say, "I've got so many things that I need to do before I can even consider joining one of your programs. Let me just kind of recoup from this overeating that I've had, and then I'll think about your next step." And so that's like one of the clearest metaphors I can find when it comes to overteaching, where if you do this well, think about, have you ever been to a restaurant or maybe a friend's house and they had a really well-planned, well-structured meal, and you finish it and you're not overly full. In fact, you almost feel like you could eat more. And it's a beautifully structured, balanced, decadent meal. That's how your presentation should feel. And so I'm going to share with you a few ideas today that will help you to do that. In fact, I'm going to share with you one idea that comes from Self from Stage Academy. And a lot of my students say this is one of the most valuable insights and concepts that they learnt, especially in the content piece of Self from Stage Academy. So I think you're going to enjoy this. So here's the context. The context is that you are experiencing what I call the expert's dilemma. The expert's dilemma is you know a lot. In fact, you don't even know how much you know. And because you don't know how much you know, when you deliver the content, it feels pretty simple, pretty easy, pretty comfortable. However, what you don't realize is that when you're consuming that content at the speed that you are delivering the content, it completely overwhelms the audience very quickly. Now, your heart is in the right place. The reason why usually people over-deliver with content is because they're trying to do usually one of two things. Number one, they're trying to be helpful, right? And I know that that's your intention. You're trying to be helpful. You are trying to provide as much value as you can. You're trying to teach. You're trying to help people, right? Like that is the teacher's heart. And the second thing that's going on, and sometimes we're a bit unaware of this, is we're also trying to prove. We're trying to prove that we know what we're talking about. We're trying to prove that we're an expert. We're trying to prove that if you were to work with me, I can be trusted. I'm the real deal. And now the problem with that is if we come from both of those places, which is one is like a service place and the other one is a protection place. And I will say for most of us, especially if we're getting started, whether we admit it or not, we are coming from that protection place. We're coming from the place of, I don't want to be seen as not credible. I don't want to be seen as not an expert. And so we're trying to prove to the audience that we know what we're talking about. The problem with that is that we go too complex, too fast, too high level, too quickly. And when we start getting really technical, the audience gets confused. Let me tell you this. One of the most important things you need to realize as a speaker, as a communicator, is that the less you can confuse your audience, the more credible and trustworthy you're going to be. Now, I'm not talking about keeping things so simple where people say, "Oh, I already knew that." It's not about saying things that they already knew. It's actually about saying them in a way that is unique, insightful, powerful. And there are so many ways that you can reinforce that, which I'm about to go through in a second. But does this make sense? This idea of the expert's dilemma is the fact that we are trying to either help people or we're trying to protect our own selves of not looking credible. And so when we do that, it's a lot of fuel to drive over teaching. So here are 3 ideas that I think you need to keep in mind. Number 1 is this idea of, if I teach more, they will buy from me more, or they will trust me more. And so what tends to happen is, we, especially if we're doing a presentation where we want to make an offer or sell or something like that, people will teach a lot. So they'll teach a lot of content, and then they will sell. So in other words, they teach or they speak and then they sell at the end, right? And it feels like a very different energetic space. We're in the teaching mode where we're being helpful or whatever it is. Like we're teaching lots of stuff, we're overwhelming the audience, and then we transition and we say, hey, buy my program. Now, the problem with that is that energetically they're very different. And so knowing how to balance that teaching so that when you get to the offer, which is usually made at the end, when you get to the offer doesn't feel out of balance energetically from the teaching. Now, here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to be selling or in like a sales mode the whole time when you're teaching either, right? Because then it just feels icky. It feels pushy. It feels like the audience is just getting pushed into doing something that they're not sure they want to do yet. And so I recommend using what I call infusion selling. Now, infusion selling is this concept of you actually speak and you sell at the same time. So they happen all at once. So you're teaching really valuable content and concepts, but you're also infusing some selling tactics in the presentation so that when you get to the offer, there's a nice balance. But it's also when they get to the offer and they see the offer doesn't feel unfamiliar. It feels quite familiar because you've actually shown some of the strategies. You've actually shown some of the templates. You've shown some of the ideas that are within your offer, and they're actually already covered in the presentation itself. So what happens is, when you get this balance right of teaching and selling, and speaking and selling all at the same time, when you get to the offer, it feels like an energetic balance, if that makes sense. So it's this concept of, if I teach more, then they'll want to buy from me more. Now, you do have to be credible, right? You do have to be credible. You do have to show that you know what you're talking about. You do have to deliver concepts that are useful. And just because you teach lots of tactics doesn't mean you're credible, and it definitely doesn't mean they're going to buy from you. And so keep in mind this concept of more teaching doesn't mean more buying from you. Usually it actually sometimes means the opposite. So that's the first thing to consider. The second big idea is you have to stay above the lose the sale line. The lose the sale line is this concept that I created. Actually, it was about 2 years after I built Self from Stage Academy, and then I refilmed some of the modules in the academy to integrate this in, and I call it lose the sale line. The lose the sale line is this imaginary line that viscerally exists in the prospect's experience of your content. And so what it means is, if you spend too much time below the lose the sale line, you will essentially, you guessed it, lose the sale. Now, a great way to understand this is, have you ever been having like a sales conversation with someone, right? Maybe it's let's say a one-on-one sales conversation. And they start asking a few questions and you're having a conversation with them, and you get into like coaching mode. You get into solving mode. In fact, you actually try to solve their problem and give them advice on how to solve the problem during the sales call. And you can feel it in your body. You've switched from having a sales conversation to solving their problem. And what tends to happen is, at the end of the conversation, it makes the prospect lose desire, makes the prospect lose a sense of steam, a sense of momentum towards wanting to get the thing fixed, because they think in their head they know what to do now. And they'll say something like, this all sounds great. I actually feel like I'm a lot clearer now. Let me just do some of those things, and I'll come back and then we can talk about it, in the future. And then they don't come back, right? And so the concept is you've felt it before in your body when you've been selling. And so it's this concept of lose the sale line. So what does this actually look like? When it comes to a presentation, there's this imaginary line. And in my Sell from Stage, I kind of like draw a red line. And down below it is everything that would lose the sale. Remember, this is a selling context. And then above it is everything that you can use to deliver content. So above it is the concept, like the actual idea itself. There is the metaphors you use. There's a story. There's a case study. There are quotes you use. There is maybe an image you're referring to. Maybe there's a model. Maybe there's some questions that you're asking, right? And all of these sit above the lose the sale line. Now, below the lose the sale line is steps, tactics, how-tos, actions they have to do, detailed checklists, all of the things that when you think about it, as soon as you get to like step 3, they're going to feel really overwhelmed. And they feel overwhelmed because they're not doing it there with you. And so sometimes we think, oh, if I can prescribe a few things and show them how to do it, and then they're going to realize they haven't done it yet, and then they're going to want to work with me. That doesn't always tend to happen. What tends to happen is they think they have a clear plan. And let's be frank, what they don't need is they don't need to be overwhelmed. What they actually need is a decision. They need motivation. They need commitment, right? Which is what I teach on how to do in the Speak to Convert masterclass. And so this concept of when you overwhelm people with too many actions, it really stops them from feeling like they have a desire to move forward. So the lose the sale line, very valuable concept. I want you to consider that next time you're creating content, etc. Number 3 is with your content, you need to balance the brain. So what I mean by balancing the brain is you need to have a blend of not just one type of content, you need to have 2 types of content. So, to think about it simplistically from a brain perspective, we go a left brain and a right brain. We have a logical brain and we have an emotive brain. And so with your content, you want to look at your content and make sure there's a nice balance of it. And so if you're all about teaching steps and tactics and practicals, where do you think that sits? Right brain or left brain? Left brain. If you're telling lots of stories, where does that fit? Left brain or right brain? Right brain, right? So you would just want to make sure you have a balance. Now, you will tend to lean towards one side of the brain. Maybe you deliver a lot of right brain stuff, a lot of stories, a lot of case studies, a lot of images and metaphors, emotive driven. But it's also important to have the right brain as well, like justifications, reframes, case studies, some statistics, maybe a framework or a model. Like all of these are left brain. And so getting some balance in your presentation is really important to make the experience feel and for it to actually be a holistic learning experience. And even if that learning is that they need to take the next step with your program or to book a call or whatever it is, right? And so this concept of balance the brain is really important when it comes to delivering great content. So 3 ideas. We started off with this first the context of the expert's dilemma, right? And then number 1 was that if you teach them, they'll want to buy from you. I think it's a mistake. It's not necessarily true, right? We talked about the idea of infusion selling, speaking and selling at the same time. Then stay above the lose the sale line. The lose the sale line is, you want to stay above that. Number 3 is balance the brain. And so you want to make sure you want to balance out the brain to ensure that is, holistic in its communication. Now, I wanted to announce something actually, which I haven't shared publicly, is the fact that I am hosting our first in-person workshop in 6 years. Now, I've hosted a few for some of our kind of high-level clients in our high-level programs, but I'm hosting like a public workshop. This is one of the first public workshops we've ran, and it is called Sell from Stage Live. And so everything I've talked about today, we're going to be practicing, we're going to be building out, we're going to be going through. If you found today valuable, you would love Sell from Stage Live. It is running on September 17th. Sorry, I'll say that again. September 18th and 19th. It's a Friday and a Saturday. This year, 2026, we are running Sell from Stage live, and we're going to be doing stagecraft mastery. So that's how you use your tone, your body, your tempo, how you communicate and master the stage. There's going to be lots of practice. We're going to be doing storytelling mastery. We're going to be doing irresistible content design. We're going to be talking about how to get on stages. We're going to be talking about how to communicate the value of what you do without oversharing. Like, there's going to be so much amazing networking. It's phenomenal. You should see the event, by the way. The event space is right on the beach. It's stunning. And it'll be a beautiful time of year here in Orange County. So the event is it's in Orange County in California. It's actually at Huntington Beach, and it's going to be phenomenal. So if you're interested in finding out more information about that, we'll put a link in the show notes. You can check that out, or you can just come to my Instagram and just DM me the word event, and I'll send over some details, right? So if you're interested in doing an in-person workshop with me, you will not regret it, by the way. If you decide to come and experience the workshop with me, it's going to be phenomenal, right? It's going to be like an experience you've never had before. A lot of the time, workshops and conferences, it's just like a massive talking head show, right? Where it's just one presentation after the next presentation. And that's kind of cool. But most of the time, you don't walk away with anything. Once again, you walk away with just like kind of all you can eat buffet, and you're exhausted and you got too much content. This is not going to be like that at all. This is going to be roll up your sleeves. We're going to be doing a workshop together. You're going to be walking away with outcomes, with clear sense of confidence, of content, of communication abilities, so that you can truly speak more effectively on your in-person and your virtual presentations. And so definitely check that out. The link will be in the show notes. Sell from Stage Live. It's our first in-person event for a long time, and I'm excited. We've actually I will say, the time of this recording, we're almost half full already because I've opened it up to some of my students already. The room is almost half full, which is really exciting. And so if you're considering joining, definitely check it out. Get yourself planned. Get yourself booked in. It's going to be phenomenal, and we'll be able to hang out. We'll be able to meet. I'd love to say hello, meet you, all that sort of good stuff. So check that out, and it's going to be great. Thanks so much for being a part of the Expert Edge, and we'll talk to you really soon. Bye for now.